What if the most dangerous weapon on the Ukrainian battlefield makes absolutely no sound, fires no bullets, costs almost nothing to operate, and your enemy never even sees it coming? Ukraine just unveiled something that is changing the rules of modern warfare overnight. And the most shocking part, it fits in the trunk of a car. Welcome back to War News. The conflict in Ukraine has become something that military historians are going to study for generations, not just because of its scale, but because of the speed at which both sides have been forced to evolve. Every few months, one side introduces something new, the other side adapts, and the battlefield shifts again.
It is an arms race happening in real time, compressed into weeks instead of years. But what Ukraine just revealed, quietly, with almost no fanfare, may be the single most significant leap forward in its entire wartime innovation story. It's called Sunray. And if the early reports hold up, it could fundamentally reshape how Ukraine defends itself from the relentless drone campaign that has terrorized its cities, knocked out its power grid, and cost the country an almost unimaginable amount in interceptor missiles. Let's break it all down, what we know, what we can reasonably infer, and what the bigger strategic picture looks like.
To understand why Sunray matters, you first have to understand the problem it was designed to solve. And that problem is fundamentally about math. Russia, over the course of 2025 alone, was launching over 1,000 Shahed drones per week against Ukrainian cities and infrastructure. 1,000 per week. These aren't precision cruise missiles. These are cheap, mass-produced kamikaze drones that Iran originally designed and Russia has been cranking out by the tens of thousands. Each one costs somewhere in the range of $50,000. Dirt cheap by military standards. Now here's where the math gets brutal. Every time Ukraine wants to intercept one of those drones, it has to spend money. If it uses a missile interceptor, that interceptor itself is a small missile, manufactured, tested, shipped, and launched.
Russia understood this. That's the whole strategy. Flood the skies with cheap drones, drain Ukraine's expensive interceptor stockpiles, and eventually you win through economics, not just through explosions. It is a war of financial attrition as much as it is a war of firepower. Ukraine's defense industry recognized this problem early, and they started looking for answers. But while Ukraine was working on solutions, Russia was simultaneously evolving its drone tactics in a way that broke most of the countermeasures Ukraine had developed. Electronic warfare, jamming GPS signals, spoofing drone navigation had become one of Ukraine's most effective tools against commercial quadcopters and Shahed drones. These systems rely on radio signals and GPS to navigate, and if you can interfere with those signals, the drone becomes useless.
Ukraine got exceptionally good at this. So Russia adapted. By 2024, Russian forces started deploying what became known as fiber-optic drones. Instead of communicating through radio waves or GPS, these drones are connected to their operator through a physical cable, a thin fiber-optic wire that spools out behind them as they fly. The signal travels through that wire at the speed of light, completely immune to jamming, completely immune to spoofing, because there's no wireless signal to jam. The drone is essentially a puppet on a string, an incredibly precise, hard to detect, deadly puppet. And there was no good answer to it. You can't jam a wire. You can't spoof a wire. You'd have to physically destroy the drone or cut the cable. And at the distances these drones operate, doing that with conventional weapons was nearly impossible without revealing your own position or spending more resources than the drone is worth.
This is the specific problem that Sunray appears to have been engineered to solve. Sunray is Ukraine's third confirmed directed energy weapon since the full-scale invasion began in February 2022. The first two, Trizub, which means trident in Ukrainian, and Slim Beam, were announced with relatively generous public disclosures. Ukraine released power output data, effective range, technical specifications. They wanted the world to know what they were building. Sunray is different. When it was first described in a report by The Atlantic in February 2026, almost nothing was officially disclosed. No power output numbers, no declared maximum range, no formal performance data. The Ukrainian government released the bare minimum, and that restraint itself is telling. It suggests Sunray is either operationally sensitive enough to keep classified or advanced enough that Ukraine doesn't want Russia to know exactly what it's up against. Possibly both. What we do know is what the weapon looks like, and this is the part that catches most people off guard. Forget the science fiction image of a massive laser cannon mounted on a fortress. Forget the truck-sized generator and the team of engineers in a hardened bunker. Sunray, as described, looks like something a serious amateur astronomer might build. It resembles a hobbyist's telescope, a pair of cameras mounted on the sides.
The entire system fits comfortably in the trunk of a standard car. During a live demonstration, it was operated from the hood of a pickup truck. That's it. That's the weapon. And when it fires, the drone hovering a few hundred yards away starts burning within seconds and falls from the sky. No sound, no recoil, no ammunition, no signature that tells the enemy where you are. The weapon just works, silently and completely. About a month after The Atlantic published its field demonstration report, Ukrainian journalist Andriy Tsaplienko released what appeared to be actual combat footage of the weapon in action, and the footage is remarkable for what it shows and what it doesn't show. In the video, which ironically was recorded by a Russian military drone, you can see what looks like a glowing sphere hovering in the air near a target. It looks strange. It looks almost otherworldly. But the explanation is mundane physics. It's a laser beam interacting with the camera sensor and ambient light conditions at a particular angle. The beam itself is invisible to the naked eye. What the camera captured was basically the optical artifact of an intensely focused beam of directed energy. But here's the truly significant part of that footage.
The weapon in the March video wasn't burning the drone out of the sky. It was cutting the fiber-optic cable, tethering the Russian drone to its operator. Think about what that means for a second. The drone didn't explode. It didn't catch fire. It simply lost its connection, its lifeline, and dropped. No debris field, no collateral risk from burning wreckage, no explosion that might harm nearby Ukrainian troops or civilians. The target was neutralized cleanly, quietly, and completely. The only thing destroyed was a wire that was already an environmental hazard sitting on a Ukrainian battlefield. In terms of tactical elegance, it's hard to imagine a cleaner solution to the fiber-optic drone problem. Now let's talk about the economics, because this is where Sunray's story becomes genuinely extraordinary. The prototype reportedly cost a few $1 million to develop over approximately 2 years. The projected unit cost for a production model sits at several $100,000. That sounds like a lot until you stack it against the alternatives. The US Navy's Helios program, high-energy laser with integrated optical dazzler and surveillance, was developed by Lockheed Martin under a contract signed in 2018. That development contract alone was worth $150 million, and that's just the development cost. Full program analyses, including follow-on work and options, place the total potential investment closer to $1 billion. The American system is more powerful, more capable, and built to operate in the demanding environment of a naval vessel on the open ocean. It is a world-class system, but for Ukraine's specific mission, knocking small drones out of the sky at short range along an 860-mile front line, Sunray's cost-to-capability ratio is almost incomparable. Germany's Rheinmetall and MBDA have been developing their own shipboard laser demonstrator since 2019. As of early 2026, it had completed a year of sea trials and over 100 live fire tests. But Germany's budget committee was already raising alarms over a projected cost of roughly €462 million just for the demonstrator phase. Not for fielding the system, not for production, just for the demo. Australia's Electro-Optic Systems has a 100-kilowatt Apollo laser system that recently secured an export contract with the Netherlands, a genuinely significant milestone for directed energy weapons globally.
These are all serious, mature programs built to demanding standards, and Ukraine built something functionally relevant to its battlefield in 2 years for a few $1 million. The per-shot cost of Sunray, once it's built and powered, is essentially zero. As long as there's electricity, it can keep firing. No missiles to replenish, no ammunition supply chain to manage, no interceptor stockpile that Russia can mathematically drain. Every small drone that flies into its range is a free engagement. Ukraine's air defense architecture has always been built in layers. At the top, long-range systems like the Patriot handle the hardest targets: ballistic missiles, advanced cruise missiles, threats that nothing else can intercept. Below that, medium-range systems handle intermediate threats. And at the bottom of that stack, the close-range layer where the swarm threat lives, Ukrainian forces have historically relied on machine guns, electronic warfare kits, and improvised solutions. Sunray is designed to slot directly into that bottom layer, not to replace the Patriot, not to handle Shaheds flying at 110 miles per hour from a kilometer away. But to silently, cheaply, and continuously neutralize the small FPV quadcopters and fiber-optic drones that infantry positions face every single day on the contact line, position it on a vehicle, power it from a generator. Let the AI-assisted tracking system lock onto targets automatically. Every drone that enters the engagement zone becomes a target. Every engagement costs nothing. Every kill leaves no signature that reveals the operator's location. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has reportedly tasked his newly appointed Deputy Air Force Commander with assembling an integrated national air defense dome over critical infrastructure by summer 2026.
That dome, as currently conceived, would combine Sunray-type laser systems at close range with systems like the CDIS autonomous interceptor, which launches vertically and guides itself to targets using onboard cameras and AI, and the P-1 Sun reusable interceptor drone from Skyfall, which has already accumulated over 1,000 confirmed combat kills. Western missiles, Patriots, NASAMS, IRIS-T, ACE, would be reserved for only the most demanding threats. Everything else gets handled by the cheaper, faster, more distributed layer. Sunray sits at the foundation of that architecture. Now, it would be dishonest to present Sunray as a solved problem. It isn't, not yet. The demonstrations we've seen, both the February field test and the March combat footage, were conducted under controlled or near-controlled conditions. A small drone hovering at a few hundred yards, a fiber-optic cable at similar range. These are the ideal scenarios. What we don't know is how Sunray performs in fog, in rain, in the kind of dust and smoke that hangs over an active Ukrainian battlefield after an artillery exchange. Laser energy is dispersed by water vapor and particulates in the atmosphere. A clear sky demonstration tells you one thing. A battlefield in the middle of a Ukrainian winter tells you something very different. We also don't know the system's maximum effective range.
Its power output, how quickly it can slew from one target to another when multiple drones are approaching simultaneously, how it handles a fast-moving Shahed versus a hovering quadcopter. These aren't minor questions. They're the questions that determine how many units Ukraine needs, where they need to be positioned, and what realistic coverage they can provide across hundreds of miles of front. The RAND Corporation, in a December 2025 report on directed energy weapons broadly, described the category as relatively immature for operational deployment, citing power requirements, line-of-sight limitations, and atmospheric dependence as the primary constraints. Those limitations apply to Sunray. They're real. They matter. And perhaps most critically, Sunray, at its current demonstrated capability, cannot engage Shaheds. These are the drones that have done the most damage to Ukrainian civilian infrastructure, the ones that have knocked cities into darkness in midwinter, the ones that have destroyed power plants and killed civilians in their homes. If Sunray cannot reach those targets, it is not a silver bullet. It is a useful tool within a larger system, but the Shahed problem requires a different answer. But even with those caveats fully on the table, what Sunray represents is something larger than one weapon system.
It represents a model of wartime innovation that the Western defense industry simply cannot replicate with its current procurement culture. The United States has been developing directed energy weapons in various forms for over 2 decades. The UK's Dragonfire laser program has been in development since 2017. Germany's demonstrator has been running since 2019. These are all excellent programs built with institutional rigor and long-term engineering discipline. And Ukraine built something field deployable in 2 years, from concept to combat footage in 24 months, at a fraction of the cost, without a procurement bidding cycle, without congressional authorization hearings, without interoperability reviews across alliance structures, because Ukraine doesn't have the luxury of time. The Shaheds don't stop coming while the paperwork is processed. The FPV drones don't pause their attacks while the budget committee deliberates. Ukraine needs working solutions today, not perfect solutions in 10 years. And again throughout this war, the Ukrainian defense industry, a combination of government engineers, private companies, and battlefield improvisation, has closed technological gaps that everyone assumed would take decades to bridge. Sunray is the latest example. It may not be the last. Here's where things stand right now. Sunray has cleared the most important early hurdles. It has been demonstrated. It has been filmed in what appears to be actual combat.
It has proven the underlying concept. And if Ukraine can scale production, And that remains a significant question. The strategic implications for its layered air defense are real and meaningful. 2 years of development, a few $1,000,000 for a prototype, a projected production cost of several $100,000 per unit. A weapon that can silently neutralize a drone in seconds without firing a single round, without revealing the operator's position, and at essentially zero cost per engagement. In a war that is ultimately decided by the accumulation of small advantages, by who can sustain the cost of fighting longer than the other side, that kind of capability matters, maybe more than any single dramatic battlefield moment. We'll continue tracking Sunray and every other major development in this war as the information becomes available. If this breakdown was useful to you, make sure you're subscribed to War News. We cover the weapons, the strategy, and the decisions shaping this conflict every single day. Stay informed. We'll see you in the next one.